Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Iglesias versus Shvedenko fight. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Iglesias is 10-0 with 9 KOs and Shvedenko is 16-1-1 with 7 KOs. This fight is for the IBO World Super Middleweight title. Iglesias' last fight was a win via KO in round 1 versus Coqueres, and Shevdenko's last fight was a draw versus Iglesias. Iglesias is 26 and Shevdenko is 33. Iglesias is a southpaw, and Shevdenko's loss came via unanimous decision versus School. And to speak a bit more about what I've been saying, obviously IBO title on the line for this one. It's Iglesias defending this title now, and last time out got an impressive victory versus Coqueres, where Coqueres was coming off, I believe it was just straight off the Pacheco fight. I might be wrong, but he was somebody who knew how to be able to make a tough fight and knew that he could, provide a test for any prospects that are trying to get to that world level. And people were thinking that this could have been a little bit more of a test, but Iglesias, Coqueres, definitely looked past it. As soon as he got caught with that shot, he was down and he was out and he was not bothering about coming back. And perhaps Coqueres is out of it now and it was past his peak and everything like that. But nonetheless, another stoppage victory and like another one to add to the tally, where he's got 9 at the moment, and he's just been very destructive, and coming from this added amateur pedigree that he has, with this Cuban amateur pedigree, where perhaps he hasn't got that traditional Cuban style, but he's powerful and he's been getting fighters out today, and he's got a good style, and it's an intriguing one, and it's definitely one which I feel like could possibly progress him up the ranks further. This test is going to be an interesting one for him, how he manages to deal with this type of a fighter. Obviously Shevdenko is coming off the draw. He's an interesting type fighter, Shevdenko. He's a pressure fighter, but he isn't throwing loads, and he feints a lot. He can make you quite reluctant to throw, but he isn't really throwing too much, even if he is in a close proximity or in the centre of the ring, or the one, like I say, putting on the physical pressure. He's not actually throwing that much. And then that last fight for him, it was probably a valid draw. Not really too much happened in each round. It wasn't really the most entertaining of fights. It was just Shevdenko and Silligan just kind of going around in circles, realistically, where Shevdenko was jabbing a bit, Silligan was catching him every so often, and there wasn't really too much going on. I mean, when you go to the Skull fight for him, he was just getting outthrown, and Skull was landing better shots, and Shevdenko's got nice attributes to him, and as defensively is quite sound and can make you hesitant from the fact that he does feint well, and you don't possibly know when he may come in and let his hands go, if at all. But it's just an interesting style. Obviously Iglesias, the younger guy with the momentum and the confidence, I'm sure he's not going to be wanting to just go around in circles the whole fight. I'm sure he's going to want to stamp his big size over onto Shevdenko, but we'll have to wait and see. To speak about them both as fighters though, individually, Iglesias, of course, he's powerful. He's been shown to have that power now, and he caught Coqueres with a shot where it wasn't really anything too crazy, and Coqueres just was straight out, and so punch resistance might have been gone for Coqueres, but nonetheless it still shows that he has got power, and the fact that he has been getting everybody out of there impressively, especially that performance against Reese as well. I think that was, in my opinion, his best performance he's had so far. He really showed a lot and managed to get an impressive knockout in the process. Of course, he's a big presence, like I've mentioned. He's got good fast hands though, even though he is that big, stocky, quite type character. He puts his combinations together relatively nicely. He's accurate majority of the time, especially at mid-range. He's quite accurate, and so in close at times he can be accurate. I feel like sometimes his accuracy can drop when he's throwing hooks, but other than that, majority of the time he is quite accurate. He doesn't seem to force the fight, even if he does get you hurt, which is nice to see. He doesn't cruise through rounds. He always consistently has a nice pumped out jab, which is a good strong jab, which is always keeping his opponents in check, so he's not ever really cruising through rounds. He's a good finisher in the process as well. He puts you on the back foot with that physical pressure. He's well conditioned. He's got a nice tight guard. Pretty much anything you're throwing is going to come off of him. Possibly there's openings to the body there because of that big body and the fact that he can't really cover all of his, the whole part of him. But he has got a nice tight guard, and yeah, if you are landing, it's going to be difficult to be able to get around that guard. He punches over guards as well with his shots, which are nice. He's quite calm. He resets well if he gets into a bad position. He can circle back round to the centre. Like I say, calm, resets well, good to see. And he'll let his hands go as well. Negatives about him, he's not really been put on the back foot too much. I think the times where you can see possible weaknesses in his game. He can be a little bit flat-footed on the back foot as well, but I think against Reese, that probably, like I say, that was his best performance, where he did show a bit more back foot, actual good work, where his footwork was quite bouncy and nice to see, and he was countering well, and so it's going to be interesting to see if Shevdenko can put him on the back foot or not. He doesn't typically take a backward step, and he has got that tight guard, but if he isn't really taking a backward step, if his opponents do respond with combinations, then he will just cover up and take it, which, he's not really facing anybody too powerful in Shevdenko, but perhaps if Shevdenko lets his hands go, he could get point scores scored just from being able to land on Iglesias, like I say, a big target, and if he's just stood there willingly accepting pressure, then you never know. He can leave his jab in a little bit too long at times. It's a quick jab, but he can just lunge in and leave it in a little bit. Countering isn't always his best. I think it can be good, but it isn't always his best attribute. He can be quite wide with his hooks, and like I say, that's when his inaccuracy can come. I think sometimes he didn't loop his whole body into his hooks well enough, and I don't know, I don't think it stretches quite as far as perhaps what he thinks in his head it does. And yeah, he can be quite wide and inaccurate at times with that particular shot. Throwing in bunches, his combinations are good, like I mentioned, but sometimes they can be in close a little bit messy. I mean, there has been times where there was that one knockout of his where he just knocked the guy straight down to the ground off hitting him off the back of the head. It was a bad back of the head shot, and he managed to win because the referee wasn't really too bothered. And I feel like there are little bits of times where his combination throwing isn't always as accurate as perhaps it could be. He can stand straight on, and he does stand quite upright as well. And to speak about Shevdenko as a fighter, he's a come forward, like I say, tactically a come forward fighter. He doesn't really get hit too much with big shots or anything like that, and he is typically coming forward and bringing pressure, but it's quite tactical in the process. He's not ever just trying to force too much his way in. He counters well, picks his shots nicely, feints well, like I mentioned, tries to fight at a pace which is comfortable for him. It's quite a high pace movement wise, but then quite a slow pace, like I say, output wise. So yeah, it's just interesting. He's got a high guard. He makes opponents reluctant. He typically fights best at a mid-range, where Iglesias, in my opinion, probably also fights the best as well. He's got a long jab, which he uses quite well, and when he feints and then goes in with the jab afterwards, it is quite nice to see. Changes levels, moves well. Probably his best attribute is his movement in general, and has got quite fast hands as well. Negatives about him, he's not as physical. I think it's going to be quite difficult for anybody to be as physical as Iglesias, to be honest, but he's not really a physical fighter at all. He has got that, of course, like I said, low output. He doesn't really slow opponents down too much. He can make them hesitant, but if they don't respect the lack of shots that he's not responding with and don't really fall for the feints, then they're not really going to respect him. He doesn't really claim rounds. He can be hesitant at times himself. He keeps his head on the line a little bit at times as well, and he can lunge in with his jab at times. Iglesias is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Iglesias will win via unanimous decision. I think it's not going to be an easy fight for him. I think he could perhaps struggle a little bit with trying to pin Shevdenko down, which is something which we haven't really seen Iglesias struggle with too much, but like I say, Shevdenko's a good mover, and if he can keep that throughout a whole fight, which perhaps I think he could do, and he did seem to kind of do in his last fight, I think he could make Iglesias a little bit reluctant at times and perhaps catch accuracy off at times when he comes in with combinations if they aren't landing, perhaps even frustrate Iglesias at times. But nonetheless, I think Iglesias will be able to just land more, and when he does land, they'll be cleaner and they'll be better, and yeah, then they can get a unanimous decision from there. Then we can go on to fight. I think the super middleweight division, there are a lot of great fighters in the division at the moment, and there are many in the rankings in which he could progress onto. In my opinion, Shishkin, Skull, they seemingly might be fighting each other for that IBF title if it does become vacant, but either of them could be great fights for Iglesias. If not, Melikuziev is a fight which I'd be really interested in, and so possibly we could see that. That would give Iglesias a big platform then, and yeah, that would be a fight which, like I say, I'd like to see. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, indeed like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.